And joining us now to weigh in on all of this and more, former Secretary of State and former First Lady and former Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton. I'd like to start with Orban's loss. You posted the end of Viktor Orban's autocratic regime is a victory not just for Hungary, but for people who value democracy around the world. How does this impact Europe, Ukraine specifically, and, of course, politics here at home?
Well, I think, Mika, this is a significant development. And as I said in my very short comment, it is a win for the Hungarian people. It's a win for Europe. It's a win for democracy. I hope it's also a win for Ukraine. And it is a significant defeat for Putin, for Trump, and for the forces of authoritarianism around the world. Now, of course, we have to learn the lessons that I think are evident from the election. This was an election that was certainly most importantly about the people of Hungary and what they wanted. And the theme of anti-corruption, of the disgust that the Hungarian people had with the corruption by Orban, his family, his enablers, his cronies, was one of the driving forces in what was a historic turnout of more than 77%. So this was a very important event for a lot of the values. And I just want to say that, ironically, when J.D. Vance was there propping up Orban, he followed, in the footsteps, of course, of Rubio and Trump's very staunch support for Orban. He kept going on and on about how we had to, save Western civilization. Well, in fact, voting Orban out is a win for Western civilization. It's a win for accountable government. It's a win for the rule of law. It is a win for checks and balances. It's a win against corruption. And it's a win against those who cozy up to dictators like Vladimir Putin.
And, Madam Secretary, how ironic that anybody would go to Orban's Hungary and talk about that somehow this was a bastion of Western civilization, when in fact it was just the opposite. You're right. He attacked the independent judiciary. He attacked the free press. He attacked political institutions that promoted democracy. I'm just curious your take on what should Americans take away from the fact that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin had an alliance together to help elect Viktor Orban, that Hungary's foreign minister was talking to Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, and basically acting as his agent. You had Viktor Orban telling Vladimir Putin, I'll be like the mouse, taking the thorn out of the lion's paw. What is it? What is it between Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, and everyone around them that made them go all in so hard for Viktor Orban?
Well, I think you really sort of summed it up, Joe, because what we have here is this really unholy alliance among autocrats and wannabe autocrats. And, Viktor Orban morphed from an anti-communist, anti-Russian young student leader in Hungary into a toady for, Vladimir Putin. And, this isn't the first election that Putin interfered in, as I know very well, and it won't be the last. But this was a resounding defeat for Putin. And what it should tell us is that given the chance, people will not tolerate the kind of oppression that Orban was imposing on them. Yes, he was dominating the government, but he was also dominating the judiciary. He was in every way possible strangling a free press. He was taking over the universities and telling them what to teach. Some of that may sound very familiar to your viewers. And what we should be learning from this is that you cannot allow one-man rule, because one-man rule leads to corruption. It leads to oppression. It leads to reckless adventures like we're seeing with Trump in Iran. It leads to the kind of destruction of democratic institutions. And so I think this is a wake-up call for Americans. I don't care what you call yourself politically. If you are an American, you care about American democracy here in our 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, then we want to be independent of the kind of behavior that you see coming from Trump, which is an effort to model himself on Vladimir Putin. Well, Viktor Orban learned that the Hungarian people wouldn't put up with that, and I certainly hope that we see that in the midterm elections and the next presidential election from American voters.
Well, and for people that are listening, I mean, Donald Trump very clearly always said openly that Viktor Orban was a role model for him, invited him to Mar-a-Lago when he was out of the White House, and so he has modeled himself after this authoritarian. Let's talk about the lessons for Democrats here at home. We just had the mayor of San Jose coming on. He's running for governor of California, and he said something that really struck me, whether you're talking about Hungary or whether you're talking about the California governor's race. And he said the best resistance to MAGA is results. And I found it interesting that Orban's opponent didn't run against the sort of things that maybe we would talk about all the time, whether it was an independent judiciary or whether it was about press freedoms. But instead, he talked about corruption, and he talked about pocketbook issues. He talked about the economy stupid, as James Carville famously said in 1992. Talk about the lessons from Hungary for Democrats wanting to make a difference in 26 and 28.
I think that the two themes should be affordability and accountability. And I think, obviously, we've talked a lot about affordability, as many of your guests have alluded to. We've got to address the cost of living. I had a piece in the New York Times a few days ago talking about, some of the ways that we should help families, particularly families that are trying to raise children, which has become increasingly expensive, and housing and health care and all of the other issues that need to be on the forefront of this election, because, we're going in the wrong direction under Donald Trump. We're seeing inflation rise. We're seeing the cost of everything from gas to housing to health care going up. So the first A is affordability, but the second A is accountability. And I think that's exactly what the election for the TISA party and the winner, Magyar, was about. It was about the economy. It was about their education system and their health care system. But it was also about accountability. And I think they go hand in hand. And I would, hope the Democrats don't focus on one to the exclusion of the other, because I think they're very important. You cannot have affordability if you don't have accountability. And accountability starts with reining in the corruption in this White House. Because the corruption is not just the amounts of, money that, Trump and his family are shoveling in. It's also about who they favor, who they give benefits to, often at the cost of, middle-class families and working people. So let's focus on affordability, but let's also focus on accountability. One of the real unfortunate mistakes of the Biden administration is they didn't, really focus on the accountability measure. Well, now there is more than enough to look at and get people to understand the connection between their lives and the enrichment of the Trump family and the Trump cronies. Every single thing they do has a transactional cost that benefits them. So I think we've got a great story to tell. And as you rightly pointed out, it was the story that was told in Hungary. And it was also a story that stayed focused. Look, there are a million things that I disagree with when it comes to what, Trump and his enablers in Congress are doing or failing to do. But let's stay focused on affordability and accountability. I think that's a winning message for Democrats in November and then in 2028.
And by the way, the Wall Street Journal editorial page, I'm sure they'll be very happy to hear this echoed much of what Secretary Clinton just said, in that, hey, Republicans, look at what happened with Hungary when you had an autocrat picking winners and losers, cozying up and having this corruption in government. And it was a losing ticket in Hungary. It'll be a losing ticket here.